There it is. Okay. Subcommittee will come to order. Good morning, and today we'd like to welcome our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to give testimony for the subcommittee on the agencies that are under our jurisdiction. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to listen to a diverse group of members from across the country to share their views on a wide spectrum of issues related to our bill. We look forward to hearing your thoughts today on the appropriations process and learning more about the programs and the issues that affect your district and your constituents. Your input is invaluable as we draft the funding legislation for the upcoming fiscal year for USDA and FDA and Commodities Futures Trading Commission, as well as the Farm Credit Administration. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that we have several members testifying today, so we'd like to strictly adhere to the 5-minute rule so that we can remain on schedule. I'd like to thank every member who has taken time out of their schedules to speak to us today or to submit a written request or written testimony. And we appreciate your interest in the work of the subcommittee. And at this time, I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Fortenberry, for any opening remarks that he would like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling this important hearing. It's an important reminder that we represent Americans, and in order to do our job well, we need to hear those of us who have been put in these extraordinary positions of leadership over various aspects of the government. We need to hear directly from the representatives of the people. Particularly in the ag sector, we do a tremendous amount of good creating the stabilization policies that allow America to have the lowest grocery prices in the world and that protect people with food insecurity. So this is a very, very important space. So I look forward to hearing from our members today how we can potentially improve, become more effective, or change if necessary. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling here.
Barry?
Thank you very kindly, sir, gentlemen, staff. I appreciate the opportunity to present my views and priorities for the FY21 Agricultural Appropriations Bill. The USDA sugar program disproportionately harms the employment opportunity and wages available to constituents across the district I represent, while imposing higher consumer costs on all Americans. To alleviate this harm, I request the subcommittee prohibit USDA from using funds for the following purposes: providing price support loans for raw cane sugar or refined beet sugar, establishing an overall allotment quantity for sugar, and purchasing sugar for the purpose of the Feedstock Flexibility Program. Collectively, these programs would remove 3 of the 4 pillars of the U.S. sugar program, greatly reducing the negative economic impacts of this program, bless you, and improving the freedom of all Americans. The current U.S. sugar program represents an anti-free market scheme that imposes a massive hidden tax on both American businesses and consumers for the benefit of a small, concentrated group of special interests. These Soviet-style policies impose significant unnecessary costs on the domestic food manufacturing industry and the consumer. In aggregate, the results of the U.S. sugar program are devastating to the economy. According to the American Enterprise Institute, these policies have imposed a $2.4 to $4 billion worth of losses to consumers and sugar users across the nation. Domestic sugar-using industries, like those in the district I represent, are particularly sensitive to these market distortions, as the cost of their main input is more than double the global price of sugar. These industries provide jobs to more than 600,000 Americans, including 40,000 Pennsylvanians. Unfortunately, the exorbitantly high cost of sugar creates a disincentive for these companies to continue to manufacture here in America, resulting in 3 food manufacturing jobs lost for every single 1 sugar-producing job saved. As a result of these programs' impacts, the sugar program resulted in the loss of 123,000 jobs over the past 2 decades. Moreover, the government-imposed high operating cost of these industries prevent the creation of 17,000 to 20,000 new jobs each year. It should not be controversial to end this socialist program that imposes significant harm on the workers and consumers of our country alike. It's un-American and unjust to take tax dollars from the constituents I represent and then spend them attacking our very own economy. And for this, I thank you for your consideration and stand for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. I have no questions. You have any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. At this point, we're happy to represent Representative Jennifer Gonzalez Cologne from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for allowing me to come here today to speak about, on behalf of the people of Puerto Rico. Today, I will only focus on one of the main priorities, and that is an increase in the funding for the Nutritional Assistance Program for Puerto Rico. As you are aware, Puerto Rico does not participate in the National Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Instead, Puerto Rico has the Nutritional Assistance Program, or NAP, which is capped block grant funded every year. This automatically put us in a disadvantage because we do not have a program that can expand or contract depending on need or demand. Consequently, I have constituents that live below poverty levels but cannot benefit from the program because of the strict income restrictions that need to be put in place to meet funding caps. During my tenure representing Puerto Rico in Congress, the island has had two consecutive hurricanes, Irma and Maria, which caused widespread destruction. Additionally, the southwestern region of the island has been experiencing ongoing seismic activity since December 2019. These three disasters did not create the challenges with NAP. However, they exacerbated this challenge and have highlighted how unsuitable and restrictive the program is, and confirmed the need to strengthen the program through a robust funding. The administration request for fiscal year 21 is $1.9 billion. Although I do appreciate this increase from the enacted level for the fiscal year 2020, we need additional assistance to properly serve NAP beneficiaries and meet the goal of nutrition security in the island for over 1.3 million participants. Therefore, I will be requesting an increase in the block grant for fiscal year 2021 that is needed for the island. This will help us increase benefit levels, which are drastically below the national average under SNAP, and improve program participation to help my constituents access the nutritional assistance they need and deserve. SNAP beneficiaries in the United States, continental United States, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands receive close to 50% more in benefits per household than their counterparts in NAP. To give you just an example about this, a household of one in the neighboring U.S. Virgin Islands receive approximately $250 per month. In Puerto Rico, a household of one is eligible for a maximum of approximately $112 per month. Similarly, a household of two in the continental United States is eligible for approximately $357 per month. A household of the same size in Puerto Rico is eligible just for a maximum of $216 per month. Increasing the block grant will increase our ability to mitigate the disparity until we reach the ultimate goal of transitioning to SNAP. And that was something, a study that was approved during the last Congress. I want to thank you and thank all the members of the committee and the subcommittee for their hard work and they have provided to Puerto Rico through the supplemental disaster appropriation for NAP. Still, I would like to stress that not addressing the immediate underlying program, which is significant funding deficiencies at the base program level, will continue to be an obstacle to achieve nutrition security for the people of Puerto Rico. That's the reason I came here today. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Representative Gonzalez Colon. You should know that the subcommittee is very, very concerned about the disparities that exist with the nutrition programs for Puerto Rico, and we are really trying to develop a path toward regularizing, or at least making the relief available and the programs available to Puerto Rico the same as the programs for the other territories and the states. It's going to be a task, but I think it's the right thing for us to do haven't discussed it with Mr. Fortenberry, but I feel very strongly, and there are other members of the full committee that feel equally as strong, that we must do something to equalize the disparities that Puerto Rico residents and citizens face. Puerto Rico citizens, just that, they're citizens, and they should not be discriminated against with regard to the resources that are available to every other American, and we need to get on a path toward making that happen. And so I appreciate your testimony. We appreciate the urgency of the moment for the immediate problems with the tremors, as well as with the responses to the previous natural disasters that have occurred. But we look forward to working with you and others to try to make sure that we can resolve this disparity.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to add something. One of the main differences is, as we are part of the NAP program and not the SNAP, every time there's a disaster, we need to come here to Congress to achieve the difference. If we were in the SNAP program, we'll never be here.
I understand, and I agree with you 100%. And of course, hopefully we can get the other members of Congress and the other body across the hall to join us and the administration in trying to right this long-term wrong. Mr. Fortenberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We actually like being you being here. I do wish it was under less adverse circumstances, because the island has been traumatized by natural disasters. And I would say for my colleagues, Ms. Gonzalez Cologne has done a tremendous job of informing the Congress, representing the people of Puerto Rico, gently yet persuasively trying to make various cases as to how to better integrate Puerto Rico into given programs. And also on the other side of the ledger, speaking to the reality of how much Puerto Rico contributes to the well-being of the overall United States, through obviously economics, but also military service and a variety of other impacts that, again, demand full and fair consideration of these questions that you raised. So I want to thank you for your leadership.
Subcommittee will stand in recess momentarily as we wait the arrival of Mr. Hagedorn. He is minutes away. 21 appropriations process.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, thank you for the opportunity. Pleasure to be with you. I represent First District of Minnesota, some of the finest farmers and agribusinesses in all the country. And, pretty much what we do with our sustainable ag practices, livestock farming, and business, rural business lending, it sustains our rural way of life. And so we're here today to advocate on about 4 things. The first is I would like to ask the committee to consider a modest increase of $3 million for the USDA's Center for Veterinary Biologics. Now, the CVB is the regulatory body for veterinary biologic manufacturers that contributes over $500 billion worth of economic output. And in response to the 2015 bird flu outbreak, which cost poultry industry $1.6 billion, the CVB, boy, I'm having a tough time with that, has shown the ability to do more with less. And when you think of what's going on now with the African swine fever and the potential that that has to come in and harm our, not just pork industry, but our corn farmers, our soybean farmers, packers, everybody down the line, we need all hands on deck. And this is certainly an area where for just, a few $1 million more, I think we can beef that up and protect our food supply and our farmers. Second is in the alfalfa industry. I'd like to encourage you to consider the administration's $5 million request to be granted for alfalfa seed and alfalfa forage systems research program, which improves yields, water conservation, and other research into the potential advance for alfalfa seed and alfalfa forage industry. Alfalfa contributes more than $9 billion, if you can believe it, per year to the nation's farm economy. It's an economic engine in rural communities. And as we look to feed, fuel, and clothe a growing world, investments in improved soil health, water usage, and biodiversity are key to a profitable and sustainable agriculture industry. Next is the Oat Research Program, and I'd like you to consider the $2.5 million increase for the Agricultural Research Service and oat plant breeding and disease resistance. Oats are an essential and heart-healthy grain for both human consumption and animal feed, and also valuable in a number of areas. So I want to move to the last point, which is a key one for our district, and that has to do with the $100 million that the administration is proposing to promote domestic ethanol and biodiesel infrastructure and consumption. Now, recently, we've been working together in bipartisan fashion in the Agriculture Committee and elsewhere to end what's known as the small refinery waivers, which have undermined the ethanol program especially. And the President of the United States himself has come out and said that his policy is to blend 15 billion gallons of ethanol and 2.4 billion gallons of biodiesel. And, there was a regulation that came out of EPA. We're a little uncomfortable with it. Many of us, again, in bipartisan fashion, have sent letters down to EPA and said, we're going to hold your feet to the fire to make sure that this program, the Renewable Fuel Standard, is administered the way Congress intended and the way the President has directed. And so what we're talking about here is $100 million to promote that at the gas station. So this program will encourage gas stations to invest in biodiesel and ethanol infrastructure by sharing costs related to and offering sales incentives for the installation of fuel pumps, equipment, and infrastructure. And I look forward to working with you and all our fellow members in Congress to make sure that that's fully funded. So with that, I really appreciate the subcommittee's time and your consideration of these measures. They will go a long way into making sure that we protect the food supply, our agribusinesses, our farmers, and our way of life, and not just southern Minnesota, but all across the United States. So with that, I'll yield back my time, unless you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hagendorn. I don't have any questions. I appreciate you taking the time to come and sharing with us. You have some very valid concerns, and we certainly will do our best to try to assist in any way that we can, subject to the limitations of our available resources.
Well, again, thank you for your time. Appreciate your consideration.
Mr. Fortenberry?
Yeah, just right quick, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the gentleman's raising the issue of the small refinery waiver dynamic. I've been a part of that effort to try to make sure that our perspective on this is properly socialized. It's a bipartisan effort to make sure that, again, ethanol and other biofuels as well, but particularly ethanol, are fully integrated into our fuel system. we forget where all of this came from. In an earlier energy package, there was a pollutant additive to gasoline. Ethanol was on the verge of a breakout moment. There were some public policies put in place that allowed it, for environmental considerations, to be integrated into our primary fuel source in the country for transportation. In addition to that, of course, ethanol creates another type of market for our farmers. And those of us who have an alignment of both inputs and outputs use the byproducts from it to actually put it back into the food stream through cattle production. So this is a real winner for America, but we don't often tell that story. So I appreciate you raising the issue. It's about sound environment, new markets for our food products, and a regeneration of a natural resource itself. So that's very important. Secondly, I did want to ask you a quick question. Is the alfalfa program a consortium of universities, do you know, or is it embedded in a particular place?
I'm not that familiar with your question. I'm sorry. We'll get back to you on that.
That's fine. We'll find out. Thank you.
Follow up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, the subcommittee will stand in recess, subject to call of the chair. Subcommittee will now come to order, and we'd like to welcome Dr. Schreier. We would appreciate anything you'd like to share with us pertaining to our 2021 appropriations process. And the floor is yours, Ms. Scherer.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop, and thank you, Ranking Member Fortenberry. I am here today to discuss a few issues of great importance to me regarding agriculture, and specifically funding to study the impacts on the link between atmospheric CO2 and nutritional values of crops, WIC, agricultural research, maintaining a fix to the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, school kitchen equipment grants, and ensuring school lunch transparency about nutrition. I do not have time to go into all of these, so I'll pick a couple. The first is about...
We will definitely put your testimony in the record, your full
Thank you.
testimony. And we appreciate your interest and your involvement.
So the first is about atmospheric carbon dioxide and nutritional value. In the coming weeks, I'll be introducing legislation to dedicate research funding to study the link between CO2 and food crops. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been increasing steeply. And one of the most significant impacts of rising carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is on food security. The interactions between rising CO2 and food crops will have societal and economic consequences, including especially consequences for vulnerable and low-income populations. To date, most of the research on this topic has studied the impact on plant yields. However, preliminary studies indicate other serious potential consequences, such as declines in key nutrients, protein, and minerals. When plants, including crops like wheat and rice, absorb more carbon dioxide, they increase the synthesis of carbohydrate and decrease concentrations of protein and nutrients like iron and zinc, which are critical to human health. As a pediatrician, I understand that people with iron deficiency can face a range of symptoms, including iron deficiency anemia. Zinc deficiency, which impacts about 1 billion people worldwide, already is associated with rashes, GI symptoms, and failure to thrive. And folate is critical for pregnant women, especially because their babies, if they don't get enough folate, can be born with neural tube defects. And so as CO2 concentrations rise, globally, this will have a tremendous impact on human health. My bill creates a pilot grant program under NEFA that will fund research to study the impact of CO2 in the atmosphere on nutritional value of food, and then the implications for human and animal health. I'd also like to briefly touch on SCRI, the Specialty Crop Research Initiative. This funds research to address the critical needs of the specialty crop industry. It supports a lot of the crops, of the 300 crops in Washington state. Past funding projects have supported efforts to combat fungicide resistance in wine grapes, precision irrigation for fruit growers, and pest prevention in onions and other crops. And I've worked hard to make sure that specialty crop researchers have access to the resources they need, and was happy that there was a fix included in the 2020 Omnibus Appropriations Act. And until we have a permanent fix, I would just ask that that language restoring the waiver authority be included in annual appropriations. Next, cherries and research funding for little cherry disease. In Washington state, apples and cherries are among our top 14 exports. Protecting and strengthening the tree fruit industry is vital to our economy. And this past cherry season, it became apparent that Pacific Northwest cherry growers are facing a substantial threat from something called little cherry disease, a condition caused by 3 viruses that can either be transmitted from insects or through root systems. And so once it's detected, the only option is to remove the tree entirely. And it can, of course, spread through orchards. Little cherry disease has reached epidemic proportions in Washington state, and growers are scrambling to obtain new tools to improve detection and control the spread. So several of the requests noted in this letter are for research positions or grant programs that could provide valuable resources to leverage industry efforts related to LCD. And I encourage the committee to increase ARS salaries, make sure we have abundant resources for research. and I will submit the remainder of my concerns by paper. Thank you so much to the committee for the opportunity to testify today on a few issues that are critically important to the state of Washington. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schreier. Your concerns are very well taken, and I think as coming from a state that has a significant number of specialty crops, and the need for research is very much there. I just wish we had more resources to apply to ag research, because ag research is the reason why we're able to produce the highest quality, the safest, the most abundant, and most economical food and fiber anywhere in the world. So I appreciate that very much, and I think the WIC program, the SNAP program, the equipment lunch grants, and the school lunch transparency, all of those are issues that are vitally important to the subcommittee and to the full appropriations committee, and I thank you for bringing them to our attention, and we'll do our very best to try to see that your requests are honored.
Thank you for your
Mr.
consideration.
Funberry?
Don't leave, Doctor. I have something to say. Thank you for your testimony. I think in the specifics that you provided, I think the overall vision that you're talking about is what I call an ecosystem of well-being. Food is tied to health, agriculture, and diversification of agriculture and healthy food is inextricably tied to community well-being. The small cherry disease was something that I'm not familiar with. We don't have an abundance of cherry production in Nebraska, but again, as I said earlier, hearing from members helps appropriately socialize us as to the various distinctions that people have around the country in terms of their capacity and specialization. So hearing about that one particularly is helpful, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, the cost later for a lot of spina bifida could be high. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Subcommittee will stand in recess subject to the call of the chair as we wait for Mr. Davis. We have been running ahead of schedule today. We've had several members who were not able to attend because of today being a primary day in their respective states, and so some of the members had to cancel their appearances, and so we've moved ahead of schedule, but we await the arrival of Mr. Davis and stand in recess. Call to order. We're happy to welcome Mr. Rodney Davis from Illinois to let us hear from him with respect to our 2021 appropriations bill. Mr. Davis, you are recognized for 5 minutes for whatever comments you care to make, and we will certainly take your testimony and make it a part of the record.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, thank you both for allowing me the opportunity to testify. I apologize for a little delinquency in getting here. I seem to have had a bleeding finger that would not stop. So I got that taken care of, and I am a little bit late, but I really appreciate the opportunity to testify before both of you today. I'm here to speak in support of increased funding for agricultural research for the National Institute of Food and Agriculture's Agriculture and Food Research Initiatives, NIFA's AFRI program. AFRI provides grants to research institutions of all types, including land-grant universities, public non-land grant universities, private colleges and universities, private research foundations, and industry for the purpose of research, education, and extension programs. The goal of these grants is to help increase food production, enhance food production, safety and nutrition, mitigate the impacts of changing climates, improve rural economies, and train our next generation workforce. I've been a relentless advocate for this program alongside one of my good friends, Jimmy Panetta. Together, we work to establish the Agriculture Research Caucus to raise awareness and garner support for research development and innovation in agriculture. We represent vastly different agricultural districts, but we both recognize that research for the specialty crops he represents and the row crops that I represent bolsters our ag economy, and that's a benefit to all of us. The committee and the House as a whole has consistently signaled strong bipartisan support for agriculture research. Last year, we successfully increased appropriations by $45 million over FY19 levels to $460 million for NIFA's AFRI program in our House-passed fiscal year 2020 bill. The enacted level for AFRI was $425 million for fiscal year 2020, a $10 million increase over the previous year. Additionally, the 2018 Farm Bill established an important pilot program called the Agriculture Advanced Research and Development Authority, AGARDA, designed to solicit solutions to the challenges we face in ag through high-risk, high-reward research. This program is designed to target research areas that industry might not be able to address because of uncertainty or cost, and bring to market some solutions that will increase production, sustainability, and competitiveness. The return on investment in agricultural research is 20 to 60%. However, it accounts for just 2% of our federal research dollars. This important research improves the quality of our daily lives, and we must invest more to prepare and innovate for the future and stay competitive in food and agriculture globally. I respectfully request that the committee continue to prioritize and advocate for increased funding for NIFA's AFRI program in a final spending package and provide initial funding for the new and innovative approach to ag research, AGARDA. Thank you for your continued work, both to the chair and to the ranking member and to your ag approach team to support ag research, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Let me assure you that the subcommittee agrees with you the value of agricultural research. I continue to say that American agriculture is the best in the industrialized world, that we do continue to produce the highest quality, the safest, the most abundant, and the most economical food and fiber anywhere in the industrialized world, and it's because of our superior research. We had some misgivings about the reorganization of NIFA and the ERS earlier in this Congress, but we continue to push for adequate funding for our research, and of course you are here advocating for that, and we fully support that. Our only challenge is being able to have the available resources allotted to our subcommittee and our allocation to be able to provide the necessary funding to achieve these objectives. So thank you very much for your request. Thank you for your testimony, and we certainly will do everything that we can to try to make sure that agricultural research is adequately funding to meet the needs of our country to keep our agriculture competitive globally. You may, recognize Mr. Fortenberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments as well as Representative Davis. I just left State and Foreign Operations. I'm not the ranking member there, but I sit on the committee. And Mark Green, the Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, is there. And the first question I asked started with a comment saying, food security is foundational to stability and human flourishing. And because we've been so extraordinarily successful in the United States due to basically three factors: the stewardship of our farmers and ranchers, credible resource capacity, as well as public policies that have underwritten stabilization, partly through research, partly through support programs, as well as addressing those who have food insecurity problems, has led, as the chairman said, to us being so extraordinarily productive, having the lowest food prices in the world. And basically, if we look at our trade imbalances, it would be so much worse if we didn't have agriculture with a huge contribution to exports. In addition to that, we export expertise, we export technology, we export the human capacity, the charity, if you will, to help other people struggling to build out their own systems for, again, human flourishing. So you rightly point out the role that research plays as, again, a foundational part of this piece, and we overlook it because we're being so good at it. So I want to thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. If you don't mind me, kind of responding to what you said, I'm glad the discussion in State and Foreign Ops was on food security, because as we know, the stable governing bodies in developing nations all will have a stable and great access to a food and fiber supply that Chairman Bishop talked about. And the key to that process and us allowing to develop better foreign relations with developing nations is to export the ag research that we're able to invest in here in this country. And I look forward to working with you both. I thank you both for your consideration and also your leadership on this issue. Both of you have been leaders when it comes to ag research, and I look forward to working as a part of your team this year throughout the appropriations process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. And at this time, I'd like to thank all of the members again for testifying before our subcommittee today. We appreciate their coming out and taking time to talk to us about their projects and programs and the issues that are important to their constituents. The input will be vital as we move forward in the 2021 appropriations process. At this time, I will recognize Mr. Fortenberry for any comments that he would like to make before we close.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think it was a productive conversation today. Appreciate your leadership.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fortenberry. For members who were not able to attend the hearing, to testify in person, if you wish to submit written testimony, please do so by the end of the day today. The entire testimony will be included in the record. With that, the subcommittee is adjourned.